This is Land of Havilah, Ezekiel 8, another vision, verse 1. In the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I sat in my house, and the elders of Judah sat before me, the Lord Yahweh's hand fell on me there. Comment in chapter 1, it was the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity. Now in verse 1, it's the 6th year, 6th month. So a year and a month have gone by. This dates this vision to about 592 B.C. The siege of Jerusalem will begin in about 3 more years. In verse 1, before the vision started, Ezekiel was sitting in his house, and some elders of Judah were sitting with him. The hand of the Lord Yahweh fell on Ezekiel. He began showing him a vision. Verse 2. Then I saw, and behold, a likeness as the appearance of fire, from the appearance of his waist and downward, fire, and from his waist and upward as the appearance of brightness, as it were glowing metal. He stretched out the form of a hand, and took me by a lock of my head, and the Spirit lifted me up between earth and the sky, and brought me in the visions of God to Jerusalem, to the door of the gate of the inner court that looks toward the north, where there was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provokes to jealousy. Behold, the glory of the God of Israel was there, according to the appearance that I saw in the plain. Then he said to me, Son of man, lift up your eyes now the way toward the north. So I lifted up my eyes the way toward the north, and saw northward of the gate of the altar this image of jealousy in the entry. He said to me, Son of man, do you see what they do, even the great abominations that the house of Israel commit here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary? But you'll again see yet other great abominations. Comment in verse 4, Ezekiel saw what he calls the glory of the Lord, the same as he saw on the plain in chapter 3. There he said the glory was the same as it was by the river Kabar in chapter 1. Now he describes the glory again in verse 2, which says the glory has the appearance of a man, but with brightness all around, and with something resembling fire from the waist down, and glowing metal from the waist up, the same as both the other times. In chapter 1, Ezekiel identified this man-like figure as the appearance of the likeness of Yahweh's glory. In verse 4 of this chapter, Ezekiel calls him the glory of the God of Israel. This all lines up with Jesus in 2 Corinthians 4:4, which says the glory of Christ is the image of God. And it lines up with Hebrews 1:3, which says God's Son is, quote, the radiance of his glory, the very image of his substance, end quote. In verses 3 to 6 in the vision, this glowing man-like figure grabbed Ezekiel by a lock of his hair, lifted him between earth and sky, and brought him to Jerusalem. Ezekiel found himself at one of the gates to the inner courtyard of Yahweh's temple. The glowing man was his tour guide throughout the vision. Ezekiel looked north through the gate and saw an image that provokes jealousy, sitting in the inner courtyard in full view of the temple. By image, he means it was an idol in the likeness of a foreign god sitting in front of the temple. Since Yahweh is a jealous God, Exodus 20, verse 5, he was jealous of it being anywhere, especially here. In verse 5, next to the idol, there was an altar, which would be for offering sacrificial animals in honor of the idol. In verse 6, Yahweh says these great abominations have caused him to vacate himself far from the temple. But there are other great abominations, verse 7. He brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. Then he said to me, Son of man, dig now in the wall. When I had dug in the wall, I saw a door. He said to me, Go in and see the wicked abominations that they do here. So I went in and looked and saw every form of creeping things, abominable animals, and all the idols of the house of Israel portrayed around on the wall. 70 men of the elders of the house of Israel stood before them. In the middle of them Jaazaniah the son of Shaphan stood, every man with his censer in his hand, and the smell of the cloud of incense went up. Then he said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel do in the dark, every man in his rooms of imagery? For they say, Yahweh doesn't see us, Yahweh has forsaken the land. He also said to me, You'll again see more of the great abominations which they do. Comment in verse 7, Yahweh brought Ezekiel closer to the gate of the inner court. On the wall adjacent to the gate he noticed a hole. Yahweh commanded him to dig into that hole in the wall, which he did, and he discovered a door. Yahweh said, "Go in and see the wicked abominations that they do here." Ezekiel opened the door, went in, and saw a secret room with all sorts of detestable images on the wall, of creeping things, idols, and abominable animals, animals of which Yahweh had said, quote, "You shall not make yourselves abominable with any creeping thing," Leviticus 11:43, and of which Yahweh had made a distinction between clean and unclean, Leviticus 11:47. In verse 11, in that room dedicated to occultism with all the images on the wall, there were 70 elders of Israel, led by Jaazaniah, the son of Shaphan, who was a prominent scribe, 2 Kings 22:3. The 70 were all offering incense. As the son of a scribe, Jaazaniah certainly knows better. In verse 12, Yahweh says, every elder of Israel is doing the same thing in the dark, in private, in their rooms of occultic imagery, which probably means they keep rooms in their homes like this. They say Yahweh doesn't see us, and they say Yahweh has forsaken the land. Then Yahweh said, "But wait, you'll see more great abominations." Verse 14. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of Yahweh's house, which was toward the north, and I saw the women sit there, weeping for Tammuz. Then he said to me, "Have you seen this, son of man? You'll again see yet greater abominations than these." Comment in verses 14 and 15, at another gate to the inner court, Ezekiel saw women sitting, weeping for Tammuz. Tammuz is a Mesopotamian god that supposedly spends half the year alive and half dead. His annual death occurs early in the summer, after which there's a consistently long season without rain and everything turns brown. So Tammuz's death was supposedly the cause of their long, dry, brown season. And in verse 15, but wait, there's more than an idol in the courtyard, and more than widespread devotion to the occult, and more than women weeping for Tammuz. There's an even greater abomination than these. Verse 16. He brought me to the inner court of Yahweh's house, and I saw at the door of Yahweh's temple, between the porch and the altar, there were about 25 men with their backs toward Yahweh's temple and their faces toward the east. They were worshiping the sun toward the east. Then he said to me, "Have you seen this, son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they filled the land with violence, and have turned again to provoke me to anger. Behold, they put the branch to their nose. Therefore I will also deal in wrath. My eye won't spare, neither will I have pity. Though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet I'll not hear them." Comment in verse 16, Yahweh brought Ezekiel to a scene between the porch and the altar. This is right on the doorstep of the temple. 25 men had their backs to the temple, worshiping the rising sun toward the east. Assuming they were bowing, they were showing their rear ends to the temple. In verse 17, is it a light thing that they commit all these abominations? For they filled the land with violence or wrong, and they provoke me to anger. Yahweh said the men worshiping the sun put the branch to the nose, which has something to do with their worship of the sun. In verse 18, therefore he'll deal with them in wrath. That wrath is about 3 years away. Though they cried to him with a loud voice, he will not hear them. As Ezekiel sat in his home in Mesopotamia, the scenes which Yahweh showed him in Jerusalem in this chapter weren't necessarily happening in real time, because Ezekiel received the vision in the 6th month of the year in verse 1, whereas weeping for Tammuz occurred in the 4th month. So what Yahweh showed Ezekiel was more depiction of the general spiritual condition in Jerusalem and of what was happening routinely and repetitively. Ezekiel 9 is next.